we create the tools and the tools create us.
That's right.
We talked with Kodak, who invented digital camera. We talked with Blockbuster, who didn't think that the internet was going to be anything big.
When you use a technology to extend your stuff, you actually amputate the part of the body that you're extending. So the wheel amputates the foot. The AI actually can amputate the mind. Friction is what makes life life. If there was no friction, there would be no life. How do we funnel people towards outcomes when everything is limitless? Hello, welcome to Future Commerce. I am Brian, your host. I am here live at Optimove Connects, and I have two of the most interesting people at the conference here with me today. Pini Yakuel, CEO of Optimove, and Nick Badminton. I'm going to get that right. Badminton.
Yep. Like the game.
Futurist.
Yeah.
Futurist.
Chief Futurist.
Chief Futurist.
At futurist.com.
At futurist.com.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm here.
Super excited to chat with you both because we're going to have a fun conversation about AI, marketing, and the future.
Sure.
Which at Future Commerce, that's what we talk about a lot. At Future Commerce, we like to say commerce is culture, and that people are what make the difference in commerce, and a transaction is identity exchange.
Right.
And I think this is really important going in this conversation because as we talk about new channels and new ways of engaging with customers, this is going to change how people relate to each other.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I'd like to kick things off with is, Pini, in your keynote, you talked about this positionless marketer, someone who's going to be able to do all the jobs, or at least be able to be informed about all the jobs in newer ways and be able to do more and not be as blocked as much. Gone are the industrial revolution ways of creating content on an assembly line, which a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast will totally understand what you're talking about. Now we're going to be able to do things from one spot. Give us a quick rundown on why this is the case. And then I think that will start to spur some conversation about what's next.
For sure. So first, I'm happy to be here, Brian, Nick. It's great to have you with me. So ultimately, I think that the assembly line approach is the way we get work done in humanity. Where it starts from Henry Ford in the first automobile assembly line, and it ends with even when you go and buy your meal at Chipotle, right? You see an assembly line, right? Some guy pours the beans, and the other guy pours the pork or the avocado, and it is some kind of an assembly line. And essentially, and obviously when we get our medical treatment, you got a specialist for your ENT and your pediatric and different types of, because there's too much knowledge. It's hard to master it. So we divide it into bins and we say, you're gonna specialize in this and you're gonna specialize in that. And when we need to assemble a piece of work, we're gonna take that piece of work and run it through the stations. As a disclaimer, I'm an industrial engineer by training, right? So it's kind of like my wheelhouse, at least what I studied. And that's how we do things, and fine. When there's no choice, that's the best way to get it done. Even as a company scales, typically when I scaled Optimove, right, you start having more specialized roles, right? Makes sense. When you specialize in something, you get less mistakes. If you do the same thing over and over again, you do it in a higher quality. There's less variance on the work that you're going to do, and you can hit scale. Beautiful. The pain points and the struggles of that is you take autonomy from a lot of people, you rob them from their creativity and from their joy, and many times they're just stuck waiting, right? I'm going to wait for you to get something done. Now, in a new world where it's AI powered, maybe we can unlock versatility, right? I started Optimove, I was a guy in a garage with 2-3 other people. And when you think about startups, people say, right, if you work in a startup, I wear many hats. What does that mean? It means you're positionless, right? You're basically doing marketing one day, you're doing ops the next day, you're writing code the next day, and startups get stuff done, right? That's how they become great companies, and quickly, right? That's what they have against the bigger guys, speed. What do you have against the bigger guys? You got the speed because you're positionless. Now, when we take it to today and with the Gen AI revolution, all of a sudden, I'm a great writer. I've always been a person with great ideas. Takes me a long time to write. I can write well, breaks my back.
I feel this.
Takes me like...
I feel this.
Some people are natural, like just write comes out of them. I'm very good with ideation. It takes me a long time to write something at high quality. Guess what? No longer. Now, great ideation, I can prompt Gen AI, and I get kind of like a beautiful, shiny paragraph, post, blog, which is mine. It's my ideas. It's my writing, but it's not.
Sure.
It's enhanced. So across every specialization, across every station of work, think about if people are doing a little bit more. They're still going to have their core strength, right? So if you're an engineer, you're an engineer. You're not a designer. But now you're an engineer, maybe on some of the client-side tasks, some of the UI stuff, maybe you can do it yourself. And you'll call the designers when you want something of high stakes, a really difficult piece of work. Yeah, you're going to call the designer who studied 4 years at the design school.
I love this. I think my audience listening is going to be like, Brian, shut up. You've already talked about this a million times. But my favorite, and I think the best media theorist of all time, Marshall McLuhan, he said that all information, now that we're in the electronic age, is washing over us continuously. And it's just hitting us all at one time. And in many ways, we don't have the capability to address it all. We are limited because there's so much, and we're just not built to have that all in our brain all at one time and address it all at once. And so in many ways, AI is actually a necessary and essential way for us to be able to sort through all this information so that we can actually address things when we need to address them.
It's a curator.
Nick, I see you ready to
go. I'm ready. So,
Yeah.
so you bring up Marshall McLuhan, right? Great Canadian media theorist. The medium is a message and everything, right? He also said something else that's really, really relevant to this conversation. And there's sort of, I always put sort of a warning sticker on the opportunity with things like Gen AI and whatever, because we're not just saying, do a little bit of work and then suddenly you've got something beautiful and amazing. There's actually a process, there's a lot of work. There's still a human capability, there's still the final piece to do, which is very, very human and very sort of personally informed. But I think it was McLuhan that said, we create the tools and the tools create us.
That's right.
So in that situation, we're in this sort of dangerous precipice of like, we introduce all this fantastic technology and then suddenly, and I'm going to speak about this in my keynote, a huge amount of productivity. A dip in diversity of thought and critical thinking actually produces a lower quality product. Whilst you've got a huge amount of productivity, a lesser quality product, I don't think actually serves us that well. Now, from if you're a marketer, an SEO, and driving that, can you pump out content more quickly? Yes. Is this one particular use case that sort of led to the department sort of makeup, the DNA sort of changing? I think so. But there's also something about stepping up and putting more goodness into the world as well. When I talk about Gen AI, I think about it as a 20% accelerator. It can get you the first 20% of the way there. But that extra 80% is you removing the sort of the generic homogenized sort of sort of almost the mirror world of everything we know about the world being fed back to us. But that extra 80% is this nuance and wisdom. I talk about being in a wisdom economy. And so there's an augmentation. I talk about augmentation. So agree, it's a huge ability for upgrading capability, but there's also a warning sticker with this as 100%. Well. But it can also unlock more creativity more quickly and the such like. So it's really interesting, the world that we're living in, right?
In fact, I think, McLuhan even said, like, when you use a technology to extend your stuff, you actually amputate the part of the body that you're extending. So the wheel amputates the foot. The AI actually can amputate the mind.
100%.
But
parts of the mind.
Parts of the mind. And I think this is the part that you're driving at, Nick, which I think is dead on. It should be able to take care of like the information production that is necessary for the function of society. Right? And so all the things that we do that we feel like are not human, not native to like what we enjoy, what we're good at, that can be handled by AI. Those are the parts that we want to push off. That's the bad friction. We need good friction between people, right? Friction is what makes life life. If there was no friction, there would be no life. And so we have to find the places where the friction is actually destroying us and creating too much heat for us to actually like live and thrive, and just allow us to get into that good friction was the things that are our creative processes. I think that's what I'm so excited about with this positionless idea. It's like marketers can now automate and push out a lot of the translation things and like the getting messages into different cultures and subcultures and generations and psychographics. And they can push those messages out in ways that will make sense to those individualized, even potentially one-to-one ways.
Yeah.
But they'll be able to focus their time and energy on those, what Lewis Pugh, who was just on the podcast a minute ago, called great works or great moments. Or he actually said epic. Not just great, but epic. We can focus our time on the things that make us truly great marketers and great humans.
That's right.
Where we look back and say, that was the best work of my life. Instead of just pushing paper. That's what we're going to see a lot of the things that we're doing now as.
There's a question, going back to a point with the warning sticker, kind of like whether to get to that point, you need to earn it with a certain amount of grunt work. And whether if you then take that away from humans, will you still hear the music when you reach the top of the mountain if you haven't actually climbed it? But that's, I don't know, that's like, I don't know if you know, there's a short story book by Isaac Asimov, and one of the stories called Profession. And my father told me that when I was a kid, he read it and loved it. The story is like about the future society where every person, when you reach the age of university, you get into a room and you're assigned a profession. So they say, you're going to be a lawyer. You go into a room, it's like the Matrix, right? You go into a room, but Asimov wrote in like the 50s. 2 minutes, you walk out, you're a lawyer. You're a trained lawyer. 4 years of law school, Oxford, done. And the hero of the story, he basically is assigned to actually go to law school and spend like 4 years sitting down. And by this story of Asimov, like the best people of society are assigned to do things in the old-fashioned ways because they're the ones that will be the most creative.
Yes.
And they have to sit through law school for 4 years. So I don't know, it's kind of very interesting philosophical, talking about the warning sticker.
Grappling with ideas.
Right.
That totally agree.
So I mean, this comes to a holistic reconsideration of how we do everything, right? So I come from management consultancy. I actually started in marketing technology in the year 2000, like in the very early days. But also when I went into consultancy, I started helping organizations transform using data, using analytics. It was way before, machine learning was really that great for an organization. And obviously we're in a different sort of stage right now. And it's the thing that I always say in every keynote, which is like new technology, an old process is expensive old process, right?
Sorry,
so new technology, an old process, is an expensive old process because you can't just throw technology.
100%.
Isn't suddenly like something that solves a situation. It never does, right? And I think that there have been some stories that I've heard here about going from like several weeks for a campaign to 2 days or whatever, right? And that's not just.
They change the process as well.
It's like
100%,
everything's rethought.
100%.
Everything's rethought, and oftentimes the biggest changes that can happen is with that process. And what's interesting when we talk about this, you with your experience, your decades of experience, using a tool, something like Gen AI, whatever platform it is, you're more powerful than the individual that's like 2 years out of university.
1,000%.
So and here's the dilemma. If we give them that tool at the beginning and they use that for the 20 years...
Will they be me in 47?
Yeah. Will they be you in 20 years' time?
Right.
No, because there's an element of learning and pain. We have to go through the pain. But like, if they do have that tool, there's going to be a different kind of pain. There's going to be a different kind of learning.
There's going to learn other things.
A new kind of potentiality to a human. This is why it's so interesting right now, and why it sort of shakes organizations to the core. Because you can give the graduate with 2 years experience something that gives them a huge amount of power.
Right.
And that to me is a real revolution in terms of a holistic way of rethinking an organization, right?
So to me, I think that's a great analogy about the age. And to me, when I built Optimove, I've always built it with young people.
Right.
So you can say, why'd you do it? I'll tell you why I did it. In Israel, everybody goes through the army, and essentially in the army, your boss, you're 18, your boss is a 19-year-old
Right.
bloke who looks exactly like you.
Right.
And he just went through a 4-month course teaching him how to be an officer.
Right. Yeah.
And then he's got 30 people reporting to him, and it kind of works. So I think with the right organizational system, if the organization is strong enough and the procedures and processes are strong enough, you can definitely trust younger people as long as you equip them with the right decision-making processes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's essential because, okay, it's interesting. You think about when we were kids, right? And
Right.
or young adults or whatever. What kinds of games did we grow up with, right? We grew up with like Mario and Atari and, like they were all very like single-threaded, linear,
yeah.
get through the game stuff. Now look at my kids and what do they want to play?
Right.
Minecraft, open world stuff, building things that where it's like the decisions are endless. In fact, I used to play Super Smash Brothers when I was a kid. It's a Nintendo game, right? And my kids spend half the time designing maps and designing characters before they even play. And I would have been like, I just want to play. Just let me fight the other guy. But they want to design. They want to create. And this is the new world that we're entering. Norbert Wiener, the father of cybernetics, another guy I like to reference a lot.
Yep.
There's a few things I want to bring up that he said, but one thing in particular he said was that the world of the machine, which is what he called AI, basically was a world where we weren't just going to be able to sit on our hands. It was actually going to push our minds to their absolute limits if we so desired and let it be. It is the opposite. It's actually going to push our minds harder than ever before because the decisions are endless. We can do anything.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Like those are the things we have to plan for going in the future. How do we funnel people towards outcomes when everything is limitless?
Yeah. I mean, this is the work in Futures work, right? Well, I always say futures. It's always plural. There's three of us. There's three future paths ahead of us.
Yes.
In fact, everyone's kind of got an infinite paths ahead of us.
Right.
So between all of us, there's
Many
trillions of pathways.
3 times
forward,
infinity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just a huge amount.
Yeah.
And there's something really important about that. But what you can do is you can choose places to play. So like futurists don't predict, but we create speculation so you can get to a world or a place where there's dynamics and you can play there.
Yes.
And you can understand what drops out of it as being strategically significant. Right?
Totally.
And then you can start bringing that today and start actually making plans to do things with some of those strategic ideas that are fairly novel and sort of breaking from the boundaries of the system that we find ourselves in, right?
Oh, I love that. It's like world building. It's like creating like boundaries for people to go out and then do
like
things.
A thought experiment, right?
Yeah,
a thought experiment.
Yeah.
And then you revert, and then you basically.
Yeah.
So is that what the processes of tomorrow look like? It's like I'm going to give you this space, and you need to go use the components that are available to you within that space, but you're open. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, go.
That's right. Whereas we're very good, and this is sort of an artifact of the Industrial Revolution, and we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
As like, do the thing, and follow these 3 steps.
Yes.
And move the thing to the right-hand side. And oftentimes the future is branded as do the thing our way in these 3 new ways and move the box to the right-hand side in a kind of a new way, right? So that's why you've got something called lock-in. You're locked into a system. Trains are locked into the track gauge that you have. And then you can never build any kind of better train because then you're locked into this infrastructure, right? And right now with software and right now with organizations, we can literally blow the doors off. And then it's like, who's going to be progressive and brave enough as a leader in large organizations and small to really welcome that? And that's going to be the advantage, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big challenge too. Like actually trains are a great example of this. And roads.
Yeah.
Things that are already built within organizations are really, really hard to rip out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just building additional layers of infrastructure so that you have space to go. So it's like, okay, you know what? Forget the road. Let's go to the skies because there's going to be space up there, and we can actually leave that infrastructure alone, and whoever needs to keep using it can use it. But there's a new pathway for people to go to, and you don't have to worry about backwards compatibility.
It's how we build products in many cases.
I love that.
We just basically say, let's build something completely new on a completely new tech stack.
Right.
And
Yes.
then because otherwise, every 5 minutes, somebody says, "Oh, what about this? What about that?" Some kind of a legacy thing.
Yeah.
So it's an approach that works sometimes, but not always. Sometimes completely disconnect. You need the railways
Right.
sometimes. So
Totally.
I worked with an organization, and this wasn't a project that came from me, but there was a project there, and they had a huge website. There was a telecommunications company. It was a very complex website with lots of sub-websites and sub-pages and e-commerce. You know, it was the beating heart of their digital business, right? And they kept on trying to build a new website. And after 2 years and failed projects and transformation was planned and everything, they just kept failing. Then a very bright guy that I know sort of went in and he said, "Do you know what? We're not going to do anything with this website. It's going to live there. I'm going to build a team from all of the agencies and the best people, and we're just going to build a new website." So what they did, they created something called a Tiger team. And the Tiger team went ahead and they just like built the website the way that they wanted it in a modern context with a whole new way of thinking. And then over time they just decommissioned pieces of that old website until the old website no longer existed. And then suddenly they had this new bright shiny capability that worked in a completely new way. They saved tons of money, they'd saved tons of time. They didn't have to transform anything, just the more cognitive transformation of the organization. And having something that's new, admittedly, that website is now sort of becoming the old version, and they'll probably have to do it again.
Yeah, that's.
But I think that's really important here.
I love that. You know, when I think about Optimove, like what you're going to be able to do with the new tool set that was, you know, kind of the roadmap, right?
Yeah, what Shai
like,
showed.
You're going to be able to build new processes, right? And back to what we just talked about, where it's like, we have a way of getting after this market. We're going to go test this in this other market, and we're going to use the new tool set that Optimove has, and we're going to go for it. And it's like, let's leave those other markets alone. Let's try something new, and then once we do that, and everyone can see how good it is, we can start to roll that out back to our other additional teams. So cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I know we have limited time here. This is already going very, very quickly. I would love to hear from both of you, like looking out 18 months. What do you sort of see the transformation of marketing and commerce and how that's going to happen? Maybe even, I mean, for you, Nick, maybe let's say like
10 years.
10 years. I want to hear 10 years for you.
Yeah.
18 months for you, Pini.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Yeah.
I need to be less accurate.
I'll go first. So
Love that.
for me, I think obviously my head is only full of positionless stuff right now.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's funny. I just got a message. We're using this cool app for the event itself. It's called Bizabo. It's really cool. So I got a message from one of the people here at the crowd, and she wrote to me. She was like, "Look, I really love the idea of positionless. I'm all bought in, but in my company, I got some political struggles. So like the BI team don't want to let go of control. The data team don't want to do this. The architects don't want to do that. I want to be positionless. I'm marketing. Like I want to be able to do more, but they're basically holding on. They're railways, right?
Yeah.
They're holding on. They're not letting me. And can you provide me with some materials? What should I say to my exec? How should I persuade it internally?" That was her main concern. Because to your point before, you're right. If the structure doesn't change, I can use all the technology on the planet. Nothing's going to move. You need people like Georgie that showed us what he's done, kind of like at Kindred, and how he changed process and technology. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if it's going to be dominant enough, like people eventually are going to have to let go. But people have this notion of they're always thinking, okay, if I'm data and I'm doing analysis, if that team's doing analysis, doesn't mean that at some point I'm not going to be needed. I like the feeling of having full control and having it's like mafia thing, right? This is my turf. Nobody get in here.
Right.
Like I'm the only one doing data. And when they let go and understand, look, you're still going to be kick-ass at data. Nobody can come close to you. For the easy things, let them do it.
Right.
That's right.
It's just like when you have kids and you start to empower them, having their own responsibility and decision making of themselves. Like my life is much better now as a parent. I mean, he can walk to school alone.
Yeah.
He has a phone. He calls his friend. Like he's got money. He can buy a burger if he's hungry. So that's to me how I think this will be, whether it's going to make it or break it. That's the main.
Or the data people can come take over marketing. Because they're going to be positionless as well.
They're doing it many times. It does happen.
Yeah.
But then, guess what? They're coming at it from a data perspective only, without really mastering the art of
100%.
marketing, and they learn the hard way that there's an art to it as well. It's not only data.
I love that. I think you're dead on. I think that one of the biggest blockers to positionless is these pre-existing silos and people's egos and fear, right? Exactly. And so, as people have the opportunity to think about okay, actually, if I give this over to them, that's going to allow me to focus on the things that I really want to do. Again, back to what we talked about early in the conversation.
Right.
If the data people can do the super data things, the data things that they would always hope they could get to, but stupid marketing kept asking them for those stupid stats they have to give them, and it takes them so much freaking time to give it to them, and it's like, let it go. Yeah. Go do the thing that makes you happy.
Right. But then they feel needed, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the persona, right?
Yeah. I love that. Okay, Nick. I was busking for you.
Yeah,
I gave you extra time.
What's really interesting, and to build on this as well, is the good news about 10 to 20 years out is that all of those top layers of an organization are not going to be there anymore. The people are going to be gone. The mindset is going to be shifted. So the good news is, with what you're talking about, is a mindset shift. Right, and what I'm talking about is an organizational and a philosophical shift that comes from the fact that you have brand new mindsets at the top of organizations. I mean, I think one of the stats I have sort of seen over the last few years is the average age of a company in the S&P 500 is something like less than 15 years old.
Yeah.
These are new companies. A lot of old companies are dying because they can't change how they're thinking. And we see it with Kodak. We saw it with Kodak, who invented digital camera. We saw it with Blockbuster, who didn't think that the internet was going to be anything big. We're seeing it with companies like Toyota today. And the original family think that electric vehicles aren't going to be significant in the world. And it's a company that invented the most popular hybrid car in the world, right? The Prius.
Yeah.
But they're in denial. And denial is not a river in Africa, right? 10, 20 years time, family's gone.
Yeah.
Right? The top levels of organizations gone.
So who's managing the company?
The new breed of people that have come up that are a little bit more rebellious, a little bit more brave. They can still be well educated. They can still operate within the rules and regulations of being a public company, or in the sort of the wild and varied sort of rebellion of a private company. Companies like Valve, who made Half-Life, and Washington State company.
Yep, that's right.
Private company. We don't know how much they make, but it's billions of dollars, if not in $10+ billion. And day one of their company, and they hire the most innovative people and the most innovative developers, designers of games on day one, and they've got an employee manual that's published, and you can see this. On day one, you get given a desk with all the equipment you need, and it's on wheels, and they say, go and find people to work with or start your own project. Because telling someone what to do will kill 99% of all the innovation that you've hired them for. So what's really interesting is 10 to 20 years time, all of those organizations are going to be actually trusting the people that come on board, and it will be a meticulous process to choose those people to do something wildly different that's going to progress organizations. You started this company because it wasn't being done elsewhere, right? I worked in software back in the day that, a company called Epiphany, that some people went off and created Marketo because it wasn't being done. And so the cycle continues. And that's how we see the most powerful companies in the world being the companies that can work in that way, right?
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a component of customer that plays into this. I think customers are actually going to, and fans, and like your power users, are going to take part in that active cycle of creation.
Has to.
Yeah.
Has to. I talk a lot about community, I talk a lot about, and I've been working with some traditional resellers and manufacturers and distributors. And the other day, I a keynote to 800 people. I said, put your hand up if you've got an e-commerce capability. The people that sold electronics. One person out of 800 had some kind of e-commerce.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, yeah, your industry is dying, right?
Yeah.
You know, this isn't disruption. This is a slow, painful decline into obsolescence and eventual death.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's day two with Jeff Bezos, right? It's kind of interesting when we're there, and you know, companies 10 to 20 years time. I think it's going to be way more exciting than it is today, because the kids are going to be in charge, and hopefully more women are going to be in charge, and there's going to be a lot more like diversity in the mix. You know, we'll see how the next few years plays out. But this for me is very exciting. But doing futures work helps us explore what that could look like. And the companies that do futures work and they apply it today, very much like Optimove and other companies like yours, they're more profitable. They've got higher market capitalization. They've got higher rates of growth because they're vigilant. They've ignited imagination. They've built anticipation for what comes next, and they've deepened a sense of empathy for what the customer needs, what the employees need, and generally what's good for the world.
I agree with that. That is amazing. I think that companies can build that into their DNA.
Yeah.
They should be building that into their DNA.
Indeed.
What a place. Any final words from either of you?
Have a great show.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to much more incredible content here at Optimove Connect. And thank you both so much for the chat.